Welcome to Love and Lattes, the podcast designed for women who are ready to stop settling and start living a life full of authentic love, confidence, and real connection. I'm your host, Victoria, the self-love scientist, speaker, and coach, and I'm here to help you reclaim your power, deepen your relationships, and fall unapologetically in love with yourself. So grab your tea, your latte, or your favorite beverage, and let's get started.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Love and Lattes. Victoria Eisenhower here, and I am very excited about this episode. I have with me today Christie Bemis. Christie is a seasoned psychotherapist, sex educator, relationship coach, and author with over 20 years of experience helping individuals and couples unlock deeper connections and embrace their true potential. Christie is trained in the Somatica method for building intimacy and relationships and is a certified level 1 provider of John Gottman's relationship work. Additionally, Christie is a certified sex therapy informed practitioner and is currently advancing her training with Terry Real in relational life therapy to become a certified practitioner. You can explore all of Christie's goodies and assessments for couples, including SPARCS, as well as her coaching services, book, wisdom cards, and other things on her website, which is www.christiebemis.com. And I will have that link in the show notes if you want to take a sneak peek. So welcome, Christie.
Thank you so much. I love being here, and I loved our pre-conversation that we had getting ready for the show. So I'm really excited to be on your Love and Lattes.
Thank you. Oh my gosh, like just reading your bio is just like, I want to be like her someday.
Oh, thanks. Yeah, I've had a really full good life, and I feel like I'm a lifelong learner. And when something helps me or supports me in my life and my relationships, I feel like I dive sometimes head into the things that mattered the most to me. So, yeah.
Oh, I agree. That's where people can find real connection and authenticity is because they can see the passion coming through your work.
Yeah, I feel like that. So, yeah, everything that people that I've studied under, it's because there's something about the work that they're doing that just so supported my own life, my own relationships. So, it's been a life filled with passion, I feel like. Yeah.
I'd love for you to share with myself and our listeners
Mhm.
what really, like, what was the point where you were like, this is the work I'm going to do? Because
Oh.
we went through like all your tools and your expertise is definitely in intimacy, relationships, and sex. So I'd love to hear like, where did this come from? Why go this direction?
Yeah, that's such a big question, right? I feel like for me, it started really early on. Just watching my own parents' marriage and their communication just crumble, and really desiring to find the recipe of what makes relationships work, long lasting, what makes relationships be filled with trust, and just my own struggles in my own relationships. I always knew that I wanted to help people, but early on in my career, this is not what I was doing. I was doing basic traditional social work practices and working with youth and things like that. I think through my own journey of wanting to discover myself, especially as I aged and especially in my midlife years, I really wanted to figure out things around my communication style, my attachment style, but also my sexuality, and what were the barriers around intimacy and developing deeper relationships.
That's beautiful.
Sorry, I had to cough.
Okay.
Yeah, so it's been my own, I think, personal desire and journey. But then when I see the work that I can do and that I can support other women and other couples to have healthier relationships, then it's just, it makes me so happy, so passionate. It just fills me up.
That's the best.
Yeah.
Now, in our previous conversation, when we were doing our little mini interview, you mentioned that you have the magic recipe for relationships.
I do over the course of many, many years, like 5+ years, and just all the different trainings that I've gone to, I've developed my own personal assessment called SPARCS. And so each of the SPARCS stands for something that I think is integral for couples to focus on for themselves. And so the first one is safety, which I feel like not just, physical safety, it's also, can I express myself? Am I emotionally safe with you? Can can we have conflict and can we have repair? That's a whole part of the assessment. Do we agree on how we each take care of our bodies, how we take care of our medical needs? That gives people a lot of safety. So there's a lot that's involved with safety in relationships. It's not just are you safe physically? It's are you safe physically, emotionally, mentally, financially, all those things that go into it. And then the P in the Sparks assessment is play and pleasure. And it's really prioritizing play. This afternoon, it's a gorgeous, gorgeous day out. And my partner and I talked this morning and we were like, let's go out and play. And so we hopped on our bikes. We went around the lake loop here in Madison, Wisconsin, where I live, and had just so much fun goofing around on our bikes and going out for lunch. And it's just so important and so essential for our relationship. And so I know it is for other couples how they prioritize play because we can get so serious and so in our adult lives in our adult mind that we lose sight of this was my best friend. This is my playmate. This is the person I laugh with and I have fun with. And so that's a piece of the assessment. Attunement and attachment style. And so attunement is really about being present with each other. Putting away our phones, putting away our electronics is a piece of it. But it's also tuning into when I am with you, I am fully present and I'm listening and I have eye contact and there's, support there. And it's also looking at our attachment style and whether we come forward with our anxious avoidant self or if we come forward looking for that secure attachment with each other. And so when we know our attachment style, we can understand why we show up the way we show up in relationships. The R is realized dreams, which has to do with we each came together as individuals. We had dreams of what we wanted to have and do and discover in life. And those don't end when we become in a relationship. We have, things we want to fulfill, travel dreams or building something in our lives dreams. And how do we support each other to make those dreams happen? The C is communication suite of skills. And I think that's where a lot of like therapists start, where it's like, let's communicate better. And I think that's a piece of it, but it's not the full puzzle. Um, and then the S is sex and intimacy and how we prioritize sex and how if we go through periods of time where we kind of sex falls to the wayside or we realize, boy, it's been a while since we've had sex. How do we get back on track? How do we produce intimacy for each other, curate that for each other. And so I share the assessment and then I share a lot of ideas with couples after they take the assessment of if this is an area that's a strength of yours, amazing, great. If this is an area where you need improvement, here are some of the tools.
Amazing. Thank you for going down that with us. And
Yeah.
everybody listening, I have her website linked in our show notes. So
Mhm.
if you want to take the Spark assessments yourself or with your partner or send it to your friends to check them out, definitely take a look. I want to kind of look back to one of the words you mentioned, play and pleasure. And I
Yeah.
love that you and your partner like went out. And I think you said some really key words, like, you're looking at your partner like, you're my best friend, you're my playmate. You're not just, someone who's providing security, and you're not just someone I'm having intimacy with. Both are great. And also, I do think a lot of folks tend to kind of forget that playfulness, that letting almost like your inner child out in a way and feeling it's a combination of what you said, feeling safe to play with them. So,
Yeah. And making time for it. I didn't exactly have time this afternoon to go out and play. Um, but we said a hard stop at noon. It's 70 some degrees. We're going to get on our bikes and we're going to go and leave the adult stuff behind just for a couple hours. And I think if we don't prioritize it, just it doesn't, we don't have it on our schedule. We don't make time for it. So it doesn't happen.
And so so for you, it was more kind of like a spontaneous act where you both agreed the hard stop at noon, right? To go bike riding. For other folks listening, and this is something I have recommended clients before, and that's scheduling. Like aside from scheduling sex,
Yeah.
it's scheduling playtime. So um, how do you approach it when, a lot of folks are very used to like just grinding through the day, or even like if they're parents and trying to find that time together? What are some ways they can kind of navigate or allow themselves that freedom to do so?
Yeah, I think that we think that play and date night is a night, a Friday or a Saturday, where we get a sitter, and that's all the possibilities. But some of the most fun times I've had has been going out for coffee on a Monday morning. Like let's before we start our work week, let's go out for coffee and let's have fun. And I am a huge promoter of scheduled sex. I personally need it because I cannot turn my brain from doing and being relaxed and in the moment. So if I know, part of our playtime this afternoon was we're going to go have playtime and then we're flowing into sexy time. That's what we call our scheduled playtime is sexy time. And so we knew before we left on the bike ride, we put the massage table out. We had things ready to go. We knew when we were coming back, like this is how we're going to spend our afternoon. And I think if we didn't make it a priority, we got back from our bike ride a little late and I was like, oh, I only have like so much time before I have to get on Love and Lattes. And so, like let's make sure we're fitting it in. And so you make it happen. You do the things inside of your body, inside of your mind, and also just getting rid of like the distractions in order to make things happen. Um, I think spontaneous for me, and I think for many of the women I work with, spontaneous sex went out the window a long time ago. Like that was for my 20s, and I could stop life and be aroused at the drop of a hat. That doesn't happen. And so if it's planned and I know it's going to happen, I can, prepare myself and uh, shower and do the things that I know are portals into me feeling relaxed and ready to be intimate.
I I love this. That is why you look so good.
It is a natural facelift. This
It was
afternoon, I
like,
got a
you're
facelift.
glowing. What is going on? Everybody
And
be
I'm not ashamed of it.
Oh my gosh, I love that. That's like the best compliment. Like, wow, your skin looks great. It's like, well, thank you. I just had playtime with my partner.
Exactly. I knew I needed to be here by the appropriate time to record with you. So, yeah.
I absolutely love this, and I love that for you. Okay. So with scheduling playtime or even pleasure, that kind of sounds like it kind of goes inside with the sex and intimacy part, the other part of Sparks, right? Or was that something a little different?
Yeah, so play and pleasure is specific around outside of, the bedroom, what we need to feel connected and, how we need to incorporate humor and have adventures together and try new things. And that's kind of play. It also is like, trying pickleball for the first time with your partner or going on a hike that you've never been on or taking a trip. So play can be anywhere from 15 minutes in time to like 15 days or more. Um, Sex and intimacy is directly around sex and intimacy. And it can incorporate pleasure, but sex isn't always, about pleasure. Sex is also about developing your connection, developing your intimacy, understanding yourself more. Sometimes it's even uncomfortable facing some of the things that come up around sex. Some of the people I work with have trauma in their history. And so when you talk about sex, they're like, I don't even know what you mean by pleasure, you know? And so sex can be also just like very healing. And so it's a separate, I separate it in my assessment because I feel like it's a very separate category to focus on. And I want to give it the attention it needs. I don't want it to be just like kind of shelved in under pleasure, like, oh yeah, sex is part of pleasure. It's like, no, sex is in and of itself an important feature of what makes the difference between having a roommate in a relationship and having a romantic partner in a relationship. I can still have pleasure and fun, but not be having any sex and intimacy. And so I really want couples to see it's a very separate category to kind of assess where you're at. And it's a very separate category for a lot of the couples that I work with to work on.
Yeah. I remember the first time I heard the word pleasure and I was like, wait, what? And then coming just because of my upbringing and what I thought, in quotes, like my relationship was supposed to look like what sex was supposed to be. And now, like, everything you've said about like sex being this like more deeper, more intimate experience with your, like, as you said, your romantic partner, I 100% agree. It's sex to me now it's very important. And it's important on those levels, like it coincides a lot with your acronym with Sparks. And I do believe that, I think more folks need to be more aware about that because, again, it's just I think sex in our, especially for women in their minds, it's like, oh, it's for my partner, in general, other relationships, it's like for him. And at the same time, it's like, no, it's actually for both people.
Look at my facelift.
Look at
It's
that.
for
Look
me too.
at
Yeah, it's for both. It's for both people. I think we're socialized as women. Well, one, we're socialized as women to look at sex as scary, right? We're definitely in sex education. We're taught the no's of like, don't get an STD, don't get pregnant, don't give it away too quick. Like that's how we're socialized to think about sex. And a lot of us, I know me, like I remember sitting as a little girl at the feet of my aunt and my mom and watching like the Golden Girls on TV at my aunt's house and having them talk back and forth about, oh, sometimes I just have to have sex just to shut him up, you know. And so there's these messages that are communicated to young girls and to women as we grow up. There's no sex education for us. I think that's changing though a lot. And there's no sex education about our orgasm, our pleasure, our arousal, uh, our anatomy, even like any real sex education around our anatomy, other than like the basics that you learn. And so I do think that as women are developing their own, I guess, idea for pleasure and for sex, their own new way of thinking about it, it is an exploration and a self-education around what does turn me on, what are my portals, what are the things, because we're also told a lot of times as women we take too long,
that.
we don't smell good, we don't taste good, it's that time of the month, there's all these other barriers too to what gets in the way of our pleasure, just the fact that you're taking too long. Like that gets in your head. But women need 20 to 40 minutes. Of course, we're taking too long. We were not wired or like created to not take too long. And if we're phrasing it that way of you take too long, even in our heads, we can get that in our heads and that's where that performance kind of comes in instead of being truly in your body and feeling the pleasure centers. And so I think there needs to be a new pathway through for women to understand no, sex is for you and pleasure is for you, and this is for you as well.
It's wonderful. I'm very much enjoying this conversation, and it makes me feel so good that there are people out there such as yourself that are helping couples with this.
Yeah, thank you. I really enjoy, when a couple comes in and they're just really at a standstill with something around sex or intimacy, especially, it just is so empowering to watch their evolution as a couple and come together and just sometimes for the first time in their lives having conversations around it,
Yeah.
around their sex life.
Do you think so when you say that, do you think it's because like they get into their relationship and it's just not the conversations they're having? And then they end up getting into like a rut or a standstill or just feeling kind of cold. Or you mentioned earlier, like a roommate situation.
Yeah, and I think that even, when you're getting married in like the traditional sense and you're going and getting like the premarital work and stuff, again, sex is tucked in somewhere. Like, oh yeah, and sex is important, but it's not pulled out as like in and of itself, as like this is important for you too. And this is a measure, also a metric of a good healthy relationship, right? And so I think there's that messaging around, that it's normal for it to take the sideline, that it's normal to go through like a spell or a dry spell in your relationship. And so I think it's pretty normalized to have problems in sex, but then nobody really talks about what to do about it. And I know from my own experience, like when I was married and I am divorced and now I'm in partnership again, but in my own relationship, it was my partner was really raised very traditional in a certain religion that really repressed any kind of conversations that we could have about it, even created a lot of shame around it. And so anytime I tried talking about it, it was just an immediate, like almost like red face, blushing, shut down. And I feel bad for me and the experience I had, but I also feel really like compassionate and sad for my partner that that's the experience that they're, choosing to have, that my husband was choosing to have that experience in his life of not moving through the shame and getting more comfortable, I guess, or, more positive about the experience and what we both wanted to create together. And so I think that's a large part of it when I work with the couples I work with is there's a lot of shame or repressed experiences that we've been raised having, and it's really hard to kind of forward think and bring that out, with one another in creating the experience that we each want to have with each other. I don't have that experience now. My partner is really open and talking about it. We talk about, not just are we going to have sexy time? We talk about what kind of sexy time are we going to have? Because there's all different kinds you can have.
No, I thank you for sharing that part of your history and journey from that.
Yeah. Yeah, I think it's important we share. That's the other piece of it, right? That if we all are staying behind closed doors and not sharing our vulnerable parts of some of the pain journeys we've been through, then we think that the way that we're living our life is like not normal.
Mhm.
And so I'm not going to share it because it's like shameful. But as soon as we start sharing, I don't know if you've ever been in a group of women where all of a sudden you start sharing beyond the like silliness of how women share, but deeper shares. And you really, really get into like the weeds of like what's causing me pain right now or what are my struggles. It's amazing. Women look at each other. I watch it when I do my women's talking circles and they're like, I don't feel alone anymore. I feel like what I'm experiencing is now like more normal. I'm not so unique and like alone in what I've been feeling and experiencing.
And that could be such a feeling of like it's feeling very validated in what
It
you're
is. Mhm.
processing.
Yeah. Yeah.
I think having those communities are wonderful. I remember being in a women's group before, and it was a more so of a light bulb a moment because
Mhm.
they were talking about their partners and this was before I went through I've also in the divorce party. But this was before, and I remember sitting there and having these feelings. Subconsciously, I was mourning the loss of my relationship, but I was still married. And then just expressing and hearing how these women were like talking about their partners and how they just like worship them in the bedroom and how they felt it was reciprocated and they would describe intimacy and pleasure. And I was like, this is foreign. Why is this? Is there something wrong with me? And then I finally realized there was a disconnect. And then when having this conversation with my ex at the time, and it was like, this is where we have to make a decision, which then I
Yeah.
went to divorce and started my own healing journey, did a deep dive in pleasure. And now I get to experience a lot more intimacy with my partner now. And I, like you said, having those conversations and feeling safe to share, even when there's like a little bit of shame, has definitely done a lot of wonders.
That's wonderful. And I love that you shared your own piece of your journey and that you prioritize pleasure because you were like, this is wrong. Like whatever's happening here is not what I signed up for. So,
Yeah, it kind of goes back to what we talked about in the beginning. And I do say this a lot because I've seen a lot more research for women, like they're experiencing unsatisfying sex. And then aside from it being more of like from a medical standpoint,
mhm.
it becomes more of like it's unsatisfying because we're in our heads, because we are thinking deep down like it's not meant for me to enjoy. Or we're having sex for, purposes of maybe trying to start a family, even if that's not something we really want.
Mhm.
And so I think, yeah, learning, as you said in the beginning, like what turns you on, what feels good, and expressing and having these conversations with your partner, scheduling out the play dates. I love that though. Like, I feel like I'm going to take this away and be like, schedule more play
I
dates.
hope so. Yeah, play dates are fun and sexy time that's scheduled can be really fun. And yeah, and my partner and I often communicate about like whose day is it? Like receiver giver. When you look at Betty Martin's work, like around the Wheel of Consent, she has like a rich website filled with so many tools and resources around that. And when you can just be the receiver and your partner is like the giver and playing around with those concepts, I mean, it's just so powerful because we're often in like this sex has to be like this reciprocal give and take at the same time. It's hard to give when you also want to receive. And so playing around with those kinds of concepts too can be really fun in your partnership.
Oh, that's a really good point. I've never
Mhm.
thought of it that way. I,
Yeah, today I was the receiver.
oh, good for you.
So it was, you get to be a little adored and worshiped, which is like lovely. And then maybe next time my partner will be like the receiver and he gets to be like adored and receiving everything he wants. So it's fun to play around with different things.
That's such a wonderful feeling. And like that's something I want for a lot of people. I want them to be able to feel that adoration and love. And then I also think it's a healthy sign, and you can feel free to let me know what you think, but I do think it's healthy when you want that for your person, for your partner. You're like, I want to give to you.
Yes. Yeah, you're not giving out of obligation, like, oh, I guess it's your turn, right? It's more of
Right?
like
Oh,
this
like,
generosity of like, I call it erotic generosity, right? Where it's like, I want you to have all the yummies today. Because that makes me feel yummy too when you have everything you desire and want today.
yes. Like it's
Mhm.
I you said it right on the money. Like it's an erotic generosity. Like, no, 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 you don't understand. I want to give this to you. I like take pleasure in this. In a way.
Yeah,
Yeah. Um,
yeah.
my last question I want to ask, because like now we've opened up another like can. I'm like, oh yeah.
So
Um,
much here.
I know it's amazing. I think it was kind of back to the oh my God, brain fart. Now I'm thinking of giving.
Now I'm all turned on.
I'm done. I want to schedule it. Oh, that's what it was. The scheduling thing. Because
Yeah.
again, I have used that and told my own clients, I've told my friends when they're, expressing like some things happening in their relationship, I'm like, just schedule it. I know it feels odd or different, but trust
Yep.
me, especially if you're working a lot or even if it sounds silly and it just happens to work. My question is, what are your thoughts on how often that should be? Like,
Mm.
is it like a daily thing, or should couples start working on once a week? Because I feel like there's a lot of information out there that says like how often you should have sex or how often you should like self-pleasure. And I think a lot of folks, it might be overwhelming and then it kind of takes the spark out of it.
Yeah, and I think it's hard to quantify because all of our libidos, desires, and lifestyles are different. Some people um, work and live all together at the same place and spot. Some people travel. I know my partner and I split time between houses sometimes. And so I don't think there's a quantifiable, this is the magic number of. I do think when you are starting a pleasure practice, committing to at least a weekly pleasure practice time feels really good. If you can fit it in, right? If weekly, if I say that and you're listening to this and your gut is just like lurching, then don't. But if you're listening to it and you're like only weekly, it's like, well, it's a place to start. Like it's a place to start, right? And so by having weekly time, and for us, it just happens to work a lot of times Friday afternoon just because of how our lives work. Um, you don't have to have sex either. It can just be pleasure time or touch time or cuddle time. But I feel like starting weekly is a good place for a lot of couples to start.
That's a healthy place. I like that mindset. And you made a really good point. I've noticed that sometimes, even if it's just, well, we don't have to have sex. I just want to be with you and being with you intimately, whether it's cuddling or we go to bed a little earlier than normal to do massage and just enjoy being present. Yeah.
Yeah, enjoy being present, putting your phones away, distractions away, having time for touch because we're all living super touch deprived usually in our lives, and just making that space to have time. It's not the time for couples to spend talking about problems either. Like I want to be really clear on that. That's a totally separate time. And I have a blog on my website that talks about the one meeting you need with your partner that you can't like miss. Something like that is the title. That's a very different time. Your clothes are on. You're still being hopefully, generous and loving towards each other, but it's a time to really process and talk about the week ahead, the week behind, where you've been feeling more challenged, what you appreciate about your partner. So that's a really different scheduled time. And I think partners need that as well. But this touch time or sexy time or whatever you want to call it is just around intimacy and building connection and giving opportunities for it. It's kind of like when I was raising teenagers and I would say, get off your electronics after like, I don't know, after your homework and after six or something. And they'd be like, why? This is boring. What am I going to do? And I'm like, I'm giving you an opportunity to connect with the family. Whether you take it or not is totally up to you, but I'm just giving you this opportunity to like be in connection with everybody. Use it how you want, right? And so it's kind of like that where you're creating space to give opportunities for it. And I think that we're fed kind of wrong messages when we watch the movies. I think about the Top Gun movie specifically. Um, when the first Top Gun, not the second one, the first Top Gun, where there's that chase scene where the sexual tension has been building between Tom Cruise and the female role, and they're chasing each other on the motorcycle in the car, and then they stop, and then all of a sudden it splits to the scene of them in the bedroom and they're having like this sex, and intimacy. And I'm like, where's the consent conversation? Where was the like, are they going to use a condom? Like sex can still be sexy and still have like scheduled time and practice, but we're fed that it has to be like this spontaneous combustion. And I just don't think that's true. We're not really wired that way either sexually.
Yeah, I agree. I think and you've probably seen it and read it that we do have like different gas pedals when it comes to our sex drives. And I do think it's very important to have a little bit of foreplay. I think, or even just creating that atmosphere. It's like, I just want to be in the room with you. I just want to cuddle and engaging with that gentle touching or caressing. I think kissing is such a great like way to kind of start. And then it starts like super innocent, but then it gets intense and you're like, suddenly I, I cannot wear my clothes anymore. And I would like the same for you.
Yeah. Yeah, I love making out. Kissing is so fun.
Yes,
Yeah,
it's my favorite.
it is. It's one of my favorites. Yep.
I
Yeah.
think exploring each other that way is just, because it doesn't have to be like you see in the movies where it's just like in the face. It's more
Hmm.
like it starts gentle and then there's teasing and then there's just the glancing and the looking and then the soft moans that come out and just letting yourself be present, which is part of your assessment.
Yeah. Some of my favorite erotic times have nothing to do with sex and everything to do with kissing and making out.
Mm.
Yeah. Or holding hands. I remember once sitting by a lake with my partner and just like touching and caressing his hand for like 30 minutes. And it was just so hot and erotic.
Oh, that's
Yeah.
oh, this is great. Christy, I have really enjoyed this conversation. As
Yes, I
you
have
can tell,
too.
have not stopped smiling. Um,
Good.
and it has been such an honor, and I know that you offer so much. So I'm going to have your website linked in the show notes. And for everyone listening, Christy has just given us so much to chew on and think about, and you can still access her assessment, and she'll get you the resources you need. So, Christy, thank you so much for being here today. It was
Oh,
such a pleasurable experience.
it was. It was just the right icing, like the little cherry on the top of the sundae today for me. So thank you.
And thank you everyone for tuning in to another episode of Love and Lattes. We'll see you soon.